If you close your eyes and imagine a voice that feels like a reassuring hand on your shoulder, gentle, steady, and filled with heartfelt sincerity, you might come close to hearing Ferlin Husky. He was born Ferlin Eugene Husky on December 3rd, 1925, in the tiny town of Cantwell, Missouri, against the grim backdrop of the Great Depression. His family was poor, and life on a meager farm demanded every ounce of grit and perseverance. Yet even from the beginning, his world was suffused with hope. His earliest memories were of church services, where gospel hymns rose up against the hardships of daily life like a beacon of grace. At home, country music broadcasts from a crackling radio connected him to the wider world. It wasn't all music, though. Everyone in the household had to do their part. Ferlin's job was to feed livestock, gather eggs, and harvest the modest crops that kept the family fed. They were tasks that left him bone-tired, but in that rural stillness, his mother recognized a spark in his eyes, a longing for something beyond the corn rows and dusty fields. She gave him a battered guitar as if to say, "Here's a lifeline. Use it well." And he did. Late at night, after chores were done, he'd experiment with simple chords, picking out the melodies he'd heard on the radio or in Sunday hymns. That guitar soon became an extension of himself, the best friend he could count on in a world that promised little else. Because money was tight and every pair of hands was needed, Ferlin left school after the 5th grade to work on the farm full time. It was the only way to help his family stay afloat during those brutal times. He had no illusions about an easy future, yet the days spent plowing fields and hauling feed somehow carved into him a quiet resilience. He had to grow up fast, developing muscles and calluses that belied his youth. And as he toiled, he'd keep the rhythms of old gospel tunes in his head, that unspoken vow that he'd one day escape the drudgery by singing his way into better prospects. Then came the war, carrying him even further from the safety of home. He joined the Merchant Marine, adding his name to the ranks of men shipping out to far-flung oceans in the midst of World War II. At sea, he entertained the weary troops, picking up a stage persona in the strangest places, on the deck of a cargo vessel, or maybe in the cramped quarters of a mess hall. In his off hours, he also dabbled in radio broadcasting for the service, discovering a knack for speaking to an invisible audience. Those nights when the ocean stretched endlessly on all sides, he learned to project warmth and humor through a microphone, forging a link to men starved for a reminder of home. By the late 1940s, Ferlin found himself in an America that was rebuilding. Soldiers returned from overseas, the economy was unsteady, and yet hope glimmered. In 1947, he married Velma Leona McCubbin, determined to create stability that had evaded him for most of his life. They had 3 children, Danny, Terry, and Linda, and for a brief moment, it seemed like the future might be straightforward. Get a regular job, raise a family, leave the old hardships behind. But the pull of music was too powerful to ignore. Whispers of opportunity led him out west, toward California. In 1949, he took a DJ job in Bakersfield, spinning records for hungry ears in a city that was fast becoming a hotbed of the evolving country sound. He found it amusing that his last name, Husky, felt too rustic for some station managers. So he started calling himself Terry Preston on air, hoping it might help him gain a broader audience. He also recorded a handful of tunes for 4-Star Records under that alias. It was a foot in the door, but not quite the breakthrough he craved. Still, each day behind the microphone honed his instincts. He learned how to pace his words, how to pivot from a sad ballad to an upbeat jingle, and how to inject a sense of genuine warmth that made listeners feel personally invited into his world. His personal life, however, was unraveling. The long hours on air, the late gigs at dusty clubs, the hustle to make a name in a notoriously tough industry, all of it created stress that seeped into his marriage. By 1951, the relationship with Velma had collapsed, leaving him again unmoored. Amid that heartbreak, though, came a stroke of luck. Capitol Records offered him a contract, having caught wind of his distinctive vocal style. In the studios of Capitol, producers saw that Terry Preston was no stage name for a serious artist with real roots, so they insisted on using his given name, Ferlin Husky, from that point on. The shift felt momentous, like he was stepping out from behind a mask. Freed to be himself, he found a deeper resonance in his singing. Soon, he crossed paths with a young Gene Shepard, a rising country singer whose crisp, no-nonsense approach perfectly complemented Ferlin's warm baritone. Together they recorded a Dear John letter in 1953, a duet about separation and heartbreak in the age of war. When it soared to #1 on the country charts and even climbed the pop rankings, the entire country took notice of Ferlin Husky. His voice, both tender and robust, managed to unite the heartbreak of the heartland with the polish of mainstream appeal. That same year, Ferlin married Gene Shepard. To fans, it looked like a fairy tale union of two ascending country stars. They had a son, Brian, forging a bond both professional and personal. But the pressures of a music career can be relentless, turning tours into marathons of missed family dinners and lonely nights on the road. By 1956, the marriage had dissolved, leaving behind a swirl of rumors and sadness. Ferlin coped by throwing himself deeper into his work. He introduced a comedic alter ego named Simon Crumb, a rascally tongue-in-cheek persona that let him poke fun at the industry he loved. With Country Music Is Here to Stay credited to Simon Crumb, he landed a #2 country hit, revealing a playful spirit behind that earnest baritone. By 1957, he was poised for something huge. He recorded Gone, a melodramatic track steeped in lush strings and the hallmark Nashville Sound that was steadily seeping into country. The single soared to #1 on the country charts, even breaking into the top 5 of pop. With that success, Ferlin cemented himself as a major crossover act. The dreamy orchestration, the dramatic echo of his voice, and the sense that country music could be bigger, more cinematic, these elements combined into a formula that was unstoppable. Fans started calling him the versatile Mr. Husky, noting that he could pivot from a tearjerker gospel hymn to a toe-tapping honky-tonk number, all while injecting comedic Simon Crumb hijinks as if flipping a switch. If the music was good enough, radio audiences were willing to accept the comedic and the solemn in the same man. In 1960, he reached yet another mountaintop, both personally and professionally. He joined the Grand Ole Opry, that storied institution in Nashville that had launched countless country legends. The Opry's embrace was like a national stamp of approval, proof that an artist had truly made it. Around the same time, he released Wings of a Dove, a reverent tune that soared to #1 on the country charts and crossed over to #12 pop. That gentle gospel flavor matched his upbringing, weaving scripture-like comfort into a mainstream success story. To audiences, it wasn't just a hymn. It was a testament to Ferlin's own spiritual convictions, a quiet assurance that faith had guided him through every obstacle. Offstage, he sought personal stability again. In 1961, he married Marvis Darlene Wathen in the flashing lights of Las Vegas, forging a marriage that brought 4 more children into the world: Randy, Ricky, Sherry, and Tammy. Finally, it seemed, he'd found a semblance of balance, a large brood to come home to after the chaos of touring. But fate sometimes has a way of testing us. In 1967, he endured a near-fatal car accident that left him clinging to life. The shocking brush with death forced him to reevaluate everything: his family, his music, his deeper sense of purpose. Recovery was slow and painful, but with the unwavering support of friends and fans, Ferlin returned to the stage, releasing a triumphant number titled "Don't Let the Good Life Pass You By," ironically credited to Simon Crumb. Despite the comedic persona, the song carried a poignant reminder: life is short, and we shouldn't waste it on trivial pursuits. The next chapter arrived in 1971 when he wed Hilda Ruth Hensley, his fourth and final wife. She became a pillar of calm in his increasingly stormy life. Though they had no children together, Hilda proved to be the grounding force he'd sought for so long, offering emotional support as he navigated the highs and lows of an aging career. By 1972, Ferlin's health took another dire turn with a triple bypass heart operation. Doctors urged him to slow down, to rest, but the man who had left school at 5th grade, survived merchant marine duty, labored in fields, and performed nonstop for decades couldn't simply walk away from music. He scaled back his hectic schedule, focusing more on studio recordings and especially on gospel music that resonated with his Christian roots. It was as though he wanted to give thanks for each day he was still alive, to turn gratitude into melody. As the 1980s and 1990s rolled forward, country music's tastes shifted. Younger artists crowded the charts, and the pop crossover wave took on different shapes. Ferlin found it harder to land new hits, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he accepted the role of a seasoned statesman in the field, still touring with his loyal band, the Hush Puppies. Fans might have been fewer in number than during his chart-topping days, but those who came adored him. Their applause at small-town fairs or mid-level venues was all the more heartfelt, acknowledging a legend in their midst. In 1986, he released The Gospel According to Ferlin Husky, a heartfelt project that distilled his faith into notes that shimmered with sincerity. Even if radio didn't blast it in heavy rotation for Ferlin, it was a personal triumph. By the 2000s, his heart condition worsened. Around 2005, doctors labeled it advanced congestive heart failure. Yet stubborn as ever, he staged a final performance in 2010 up in North Dakota, refusing to let ill health deprive him of that sweet communion with an audience. One can imagine him, perhaps a bit frail, leaning on a mic stand, but letting that golden baritone ring out one last time. A hush might have fallen among the crowd, realizing they were witnessing a closing chapter in a saga that spanned more than half a century. That sense of finality didn't deter him from giving every ounce of soul in his vocals. Eventually, the clock ran out on March 17, 2011. Ferlin Husky passed away at the age of 85 in Hendersonville, Tennessee, from complications tied to his long-standing heart issues. He left behind Hilda, the faithful partner who had shepherded him through the twilight years, and a sprawling clan of children and grandchildren who kept his musical spirit alive. The funeral took place near the heart of country music's homeland, with a sense of reverence for a man who'd shaped so many corners of the industry. His headstone in Hendersonville Memory Gardens stands as a quiet testament to a life that overcame countless hurdles: child labor in the Great Depression, wartime service, multiple heartbreaks, near-fatal accidents, and persistent health struggles. Through it all, he never let go of the simple joy that came from playing a guitar and singing a tune. To gauge the breadth of his legacy, look at the numbers. Over 50 charted hits, from the gentle heartbreak of I Feel Better All Over, R2, to the reflective gospel undertones of Wings of a Dove, to playful hits like Timber I'm Falling, 4. True fans can rattle off the deeper cuts too. tracks that never soared as high, but revealed the emotional depth of a man who had walked across more rough roads than many of us can imagine. Yet part of his genius wasn't just as Ferlin Husky the balladeer, it was also the comedic edge of Simon Crumb, the silly high-pitched sidekick who poked fun at the very tropes that made country music so beloved. That dual identity, switching between sincerity and humor, marked him as an entertainer in the fullest sense. People felt they saw the entire man, a star who had been shaped by real struggles, unafraid to laugh at himself, unafraid to bare his soul when the lyrics demanded it. The recognition came late, but it was decisive. In 2010, just a year before his death, Ferlin Husky was finally inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, the industry's highest honor. It was a moment that validated everything. The nights he'd spent singing to merchant mariners in World War II, the heartbreak of multiple divorces, the sweaty clubs in Bakersfield and beyond, the near-death experiences, the unstoppable tours. Through the good and the bad, he never stopped telling stories with that smooth, pure voice. By the time the Hall of Fame recognized him, many fans felt it was a long overdue tribute to a man who had tirelessly innovated, bridging comedic novelty with earnest gospel, bridging honky-tonk grit with the more polished Nashville Sound, bridging radio DJ duties with the glamour of big stage stardom. Time may march forward, new stars may rise, but Ferlin Husky's story persists as a reminder that raw talent, guided by faith, humor, and an unbreakable will, can not only transcend poverty and heartbreak, but can also shape an entire generation's understanding of what country music could be. That's the power of a voice that soared from the dusty Cantwell fields to the bright lights of Nashville and beyond, leaving footprints that others still follow, whether they know it or not. In that sense, the memory of Ferlin Husky remains as glowing and comforting as the best gospel tune, calling us to believe that maybe, just maybe, we too can find our wings.